So we have our sheet. It is complete. We have our 45 entries and our internal links and our review data that we're going to use. Before we start to create these prompts for the bulk of the article, we're going to scrape and generate the research data. So as I mentioned before, the research data is the scraping of the SERPs and the analysis of the general consensus of what the top 10 posts for that search term are saying. So that's what it is. So there are other tools that do this. I've mentioned before, Perplexity is a very good, currently free tool that does this. And it's the kind of feature that I wanted to integrate into the sheet. So again, it scrapes the SERPs and then it uses AI to summarize this information in a unique and helpful paragraph. So it has all the facts. Now, I must say this feature is still in beta, and once released, it would be a credit-based system. So you'll be given some free credits, and once they run out, you'd have to buy an additional bulk of credits. It will be something like 1,000 credits for $15, and each credit is a scrape and summary. So this would take 45 credits, for example. I'm going to generate these from the main keyword because it has both products in, and it's going to do a lot of the comparison work for me because it's, again, scraping the data for both of these products and using AI to make this comparison based on the main keyword, which is product 1 versus product 2. So we're just going to read the first generation once it pops up, and then I'm going to pause it, let it generate the rest, and then we're going to move on to creating these prompts. So as you can see, it's made the comparison between the two products. It's stated that they cater to different needs, and then it says the pros and cons of each. One's sturdier, one's lighter. And because it's scraping real-time data, it is actually making a decision, whereas AI tends to be very trying to please everybody. It's this one's great, and this one's great too. And we don't really want that when we're doing a comparison post. We want it to help us make a decision so we can now say to our reader, this product would be better for this, and this product would be better for this. While we're waiting for the research data to complete, we're going to start constructing these about sections, these prompts. So before we start to add these prompts, you do need to know that these are all individual variables. You need to set the model and things like the frequency, temperature, all of these things can be set depending on which variable you're using. By default, they're going to be on Turbo 3.5. So you do need to go over to settings. And if you have other columns generating, do not mess with the sheet. Let it continue to generate and open settings in a new tab. So over on the Prompt API Settings tab, you've got all of your variables here. And as I said, they can all be edited. So this is the front end editor, which I'll show you after. Research data, you want to try and use GPT-4 for the research data. It just gives way better results. Secondary keywords, tend to leave that on 3.5. It's a very simple task. You're just asking it to grab related keywords. Again, semantically related keywords and not data driven. But we're going to come over to about 1, 2, same, different, product 1, product 2. So again, everything you import, if you're going to be using a prompt to generate the content, you need to come straight over here and tweak these settings. Very important. Product 1 and product 2 are just the names of the product. We don't need to touch that. So we're going to go straight to about. We want that on GPT-4. I'm going to leave the temperature settings. I'm going to leave the max tokens at 2000. We don't need a huge blog post about one product. So 2000 is probably still too much. And I'm actually going to bring the presence penalty down. And if you are ever confused about anything like the frequency or presence penalty settings, please head over to the knowledge base. You do need to know what you're doing when you start to tweak these settings, what increasing the presence penalty or the frequency penalty does. So just in short, the frequency penalty in settings controls the diversity of generated text by penalizing new tokens based on their frequency in the text. So when you want to reduce repetition, you will increase the frequency penalty. So it knows this is bad, stop doing this too much. And the settings are between 0 and 2 with a decimal point. Positive values decrease the likelihood of repeating the same line by penalizing frequently used tokens. And the presence penalty is another parameter that discourages generating words already in the input text. So if you notice it keeps saying additionally, 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 then increase the presence penalty. And these two things in combination with things like the temperature are going to allow you to vary your output a lot more. So you want a very good prompt that tells it what you want it to do. You want a decent temperature setting. You don't want it to go too wild because that's when it starts to hallucinate and starts to lie about all sorts of stuff it doesn't need to do. And it also will start to generate some strange characters or mess the HTML up if you're using HTML. It starts to do some really crazy things and we don't want that. So I tend to keep it at 87. Not sure why. That works for me. Play around with it. See what your output is like. And this is very true for GPT-4. So GPT-4 is very powerful, but you must tweak the settings. So I'm going to leave the frequency penalty at 0.7. I'm going to move this to 1.2. Again, I just like to mess around with it, look at the output, and then adjust it from there. I'm going to keep about 1 and about 2 the same. So 0.7, 1.2, 2000 is fine. Save it after every tweak. And I'm going to be using GPT-4 for all of my chunks of text. There's one last column I need to add, and that is a contextual column, which is the prompt that I need to write to generate a paragraph linking these together. So I'm going to add a new column. The variable is also called contextual, and I can change this prompt after because I need the variables to add to it. So I'm going to just add the column, and I need to adjust the settings, make sure everything is set to GPT-4. There's about 2, same, different. Product 1 is better for, product 2 is better for, product 1 month, product 2 month, product 1 review, product 2 review, and that's it. Now contextual, same thing, we want GPT-4. Doesn't need to be that long. I'm gonna set it to 1200. And the frequency penalty, present penalty, and they don't really matter. Save. All right, so has the research data finished generating? Almost. Not missed any. Good. I just realized this is not AI news, so I'm going to need to add a new category. Product comparisons. We're going to deselect that, select that one, save it, and then we're going to set this to all rows. So now they are all set to product comparisons. And we are going to make these rows collapsible. It's going to be a lot easier to see everything and move around the data, especially when you have hundreds of rows. So those are all done now. We've got all of our research data. And again, in combination with the product review data that we scraped, we have a nice chunk of data to form a really good post. Now it's all down to the prompts. That you've got your data, so it's all down to the prompts. I'm going to save this. I may do a manual introduction in the template. I will do FAQs. We could actually generate the FAQs now. So it says, come up with 4 FAQs related to the main keyword. Put the question in H3 HTML tags and answer it below, bold key phrases in the answer with B tags, and use the research data to help come up with related questions. Here's the research data. I think that's fine. We'll do that. So generate column. It's going to generate an FAQ section. This is not going to be put in schema, so this is something that I would have to do when editing it in the front end. But it's going to format them for me for the time being with the question in a H3, as you can see, and the answer in just normal plain text with bolded key phrases. So like the keyword, the name of the brand of the laptop or the model number, this is a keyword, a key phrase, so it's bolded it naturally. Everything seems to be clean. Everything seems to be the way I requested it. So it moves on to the next one. And these FAQs should be factual because they are taken from the research data. The only problem is it could become quite repetitive because the questions it's asking, what are the key differences? We will already have answered that in the text. But again, you will generate better FAQs if you're using research data or reviews to ask the question. So I could try again using the review data that I've scraped to ask the questions. But either way, you want to make sure your FAQs are coming from a data source. So look, it's got some numbers in there, and yeah, as long as your data source is accurate, then your FAQs are going to be accurate. I'm going to let it do that, and then we're going to create the prompt for about 1 and 2. They're going to be the same prompt. I'm just going to change the product 1 and product 2 variables in each of them, and then this one's going to have both of them. So it's going to say what's the same about product 1 and product 2, what's different, and it's going to start with something like the difference between this product and that product is, and then it's going to again use the data to answer that question. So it is going row by row and doing these one by one, but this means that you're not going to have any issues with hitting rate limits because you're doing too many API calls in one go. So I prefer doing it one by one, but you can change it in settings to generate all in one go if you only have maybe 10 articles on your list. When you have over 10, you definitely want to generate them one by one. Or you can just tick the boxes of the ones that you want to generate. And then again, and then just hit generate selected. But I like to do my whole batch. So I do one by one and I leave it to do what it's doing and then move on to the next one. While the FAQs are generating, we'll start to write this prompt for about. We're going to say, write a short product description for product 1. Now, we could leave it at that, but if we don't give it any data and the products that it's talking about have been released after 2021, it's going to lie because it doesn't have that information. The only trouble is our research data now has product 1 and product 2. So we have to hope that it's going to only describe product 1. Or we'd have to include in the sheet, when we're doing our data scraping, we'd want to include a whole other column that is just talking about product 1, which makes sense. And I did scrape that, but I didn't keep it. So that's where you'd have the specs, and then you'd use the about to grab the information from the specs and talk about the product. Again, I didn't do it, So we're going to try and get it to use the research data, and we'll tell it to only focus on product 1. So write a short product description for product 1. You can use the research data provided to keep the description factual. Only focus on the specs and features of product 1. Here is the research data. Again, we're hoping for the best here because I didn't take the data. And research data doesn't have a variable here for some reason, so we're just going to write it, and it is cap sensitive. So it's a research and capital D for data. Save. I'm going to copy this over for product 2. And we're just going to change the variable to product 2, only focus on product 2. 1, product 2. I'm going to keep this. I'm going to say, whoops, not please write a new prompt. I'm going to say, analyze the research data. You could do bullet points here if you want to keep the content scannable. You could write a paragraph, 2 paragraphs. You could do a table, anything you like. You can write the prompt and it's going to do it. I may do a table because tables are good. Analyze the research data and create a HTML table. Now, do understand that when you use HTML, there is always a possibility that it doesn't complete the code or it does something strange and then it messes up your table and you need to fix that on the front end. So keep that in mind. If you don't want too much data cleanup, you could just do a paragraph or bullet points. Analyze the research data and create a HTML table of similarities between product 1 and product 2. I haven't written anything about the tone in either of these, but I'm going to do that in the other sections where I start talking about what product 1 is better for and so on. So you might see things like additionally and firstly and secondly and things like that are very typical of AI, but we are going to focus on the tone and stuff in the later section of the post, further down in the post. So analyze the research data and create a HTML table of similarities between product 1 and product 2. Here is the research data. I think that should be okay. Hopefully it does table correctly. I'm going to save that. Okay. Still working our way through. We are at 34, so nearly done.